do this together, and we're labouring under the impression.
Right, so, horse, my horse, my horse. Yeah. So I then thought, Julian Assange, yesterday he was in WikiLeaks, which is essentially their press. And I think in about an hour's time, just up the road here, we're going to have the extradition hearing started. I think at about 12 o'clock, which is structure. So I might, when we're done here, Ranjan, go up there and see if I can get a couple of images amongst the scrum, Roger.
Yeah.
Then I was thinking, okay, so he's back. Is Williamson a whistleblower? Obviously, we've got this whole Sidwell thing. And the Telegraph published a story on and May that we may have different views on this, but I didn't.
Quite a lengthy. Well, that's a lot of stuff, Ranjan.
I know that you're on this. So.
Yeah, it's to know whether to start with Assange or whether to start with Williamson. And I mean, they are loosely connected. You know, I mean, Assange is accused of leaking sensitive security information. That's why the Americans want him, for putting operatives at risk or whatever. And Williamson is accused of effectively breaking the Official Secrets Act. I watched earlier quite a lengthy report that was on Channel 4 News last night. And at the end of that, they interviewed Dr. Julian Lewis, who's the Conservative MP for the New Forest. And he is actually on the Security Oversight Committee. So I watched a long interview of that Security Committee of Sidwell, the head of the Civil Service, the head of the National Security Council. And Sidwell was basically has explained at various times. There are quite a lot of these interviews online that you can look at. And he was explaining something called the fusion doctrine, which is kind of like, you know, there used to be this thing about joined up government. It's kind of like joined up security. And that is all to do with this EU military unification at the moment. Okay, so put that to one side and remember that. What Julian Lewis actually said about Gavin Williamson was there's a distinction between a political leak and a security leak. And what he was saying, quite strongly it seemed to me, is that what Williamson actually did, or is accused of, is a political leak and not a security leak. Now, Tom Watson was interviewed in the same segment separately, and he was sort of saying, well, obviously the guy has the opportunity to clear his name, but people can't be placed above the law. If he has, in fact, breached the Official Secrets Act, then obviously that's a criminal matter, and there would need to be a criminal investigation and then a criminal trial. And of course, that due process is something which I think Assange isn't being afforded. So it actually being given due process under law in the UK at the moment is obviously something which Tom Watson, an elite politician, believes should apply to other elite politicians. But it would be interesting to see what Tom Watson had to say about Julian Assange and this extradition, because there hasn't been much coverage of that. So then put those all to one side, and they're sort of like political and security questions. And then let's look at who are we, and what is that? What is 5G? What is it exactly? And again, this is something which is very much off-stream, non-mainstream. There is quite a lot of information about these very short microwaves that 5G uses, and there are medical concerns about the effect of those very short wavelength. I think they're 1 millimeter microwaves or something, or nanometer microwaves, and they have profound effects on human health. And in many of the test installations in the United States and all the rest of it, these types of microwaves have actually been weaponized. There are weapons which are used for what they call domestic crowd control and things like this. And you can go to the United States, you can buy these off American arms manufacturers. So the microwaves affect our brain waves, and they affect basically our physiology. Now,
domestic crowd control. Could you go into that? Are you talking about facial recognition?
No, not at all. What I'm talking about is it's used as, instead of rubber bullets, you fire basically a laser, which is basically these microwaves, at your target, and it will make them feel sick, it will make them disoriented, and basically disable them. It's kind of like a taser, without the wires attached.
A taser without the wires. So does that mean that you
I mean,
you can zap anyone?
All I would say about all of that stuff is if you do a couple of clicks on the internet, you will find this stuff. And there are lots of very long lectures. There are lots of people and pressure groups opposing this stuff, but they're real pressure groups outside of the NGO complex, because obviously the NGO complex doesn't complain about this sort of stuff. Like, it would be interesting, I haven't seen a single person at Extinction Rebellion mention 5G, for instance. And a lot of the cutting down of trees in urban areas is to assess 5Gs, because the thing about 5G and these very short wavelength microwaves is they will not pass through solid objects like trees. And so to roll out this technology, okay, regardless of who's supplying it, whether it's Huawei and all the rest of it, to roll this stuff out in urban areas, and it's basically to map urban areas, you've got to chop down trees and things, because it gets in the way of there are lots basically there are lots of transmitters which create a network, and they all have to basically communicate with each other, and then they send back to a central computer processor all that different information, which then gets put together, and it can provide mapping. It can do face recognition and all this sort of thing. But it's basically a distributed network of microwave transmitters, which, when all that data is brought back to the central processing unit, it can be processed in various ways, and various algorithms can interrogate the data coming back to identify threats or retail opportunities. So in a shopping center, for instance, it will allow, basically almost mind reading. Like there are various apps like Siri. Gavin Williamson. Do you remember? Remember when Gavin Williamson? This is important. I just want to make this point. Do you remember when Gavin Williamson stood at the dispatch box and his Siri went off on his mobile phone? Well, that's a security threat. But Siri and those sorts of technologies will be enabled with steroids by the 5G network. And so it's a spying thing. The benefit is absolutely marginal to consumers, but it's very, very, very helpful. to the surveillance state, and that's what it's.
Roger. Okay, so Roger, to clarify, the Huawei story is in fact a surveillance capitalism story, masquerading
Yes.
as if it's a kind of
A trade war story. It's not. It's wrapped up in the whole trade war thing, but that's basically a great game geopolitical wrestling match, which has been going on for years. There's the BRICS Development Bank, which is now called the New Development Bank or something, has been going along quite nicely. As yet, it's still to be unmolested, and of course, Britain really upset the Americans by becoming a partner, or in that bank, right?
I've never heard of it.
You have never heard of it? Oh, well, it used to be called the BRICS Bank, and now it's called the Development Bank, and it's outside of the IBS and the existing central bank. The BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China. So basically the non-aligned states and Iran and things like that. And so there's the BRICS Bank.
Is it 20 of them? Is it 20 of them?
Well, you'll have to go on their website because it's been going for about 3 or 4 years now, and it's become reasonably well established and has made some very large development loans into the world economy. I can tell you something who'd be very aware of it is Penny Mordaunt, who's International Development Secretary, because international development and international finance and IMF liberalization regimes put into economies, not least Assange as well. We see Assange with this. Ecuador recently had a huge IMF loan. Julian Assange.
Okay, no, not IMF.
Not through BRICS, no, not through BRICS. But international development and international aid, okay, is basically run by spooks. It's not run by bankers and for commerce. The game is to control access to resources, yeah? And the way that's done is through the financial system and through the money system. There's nothing controversial in that. Anyone that's been paying attention, and have you read the book Confessions of an International Hitman?
I've heard a lot about it. John Perkins.
Well, it's been out years now. Yeah. So that stuff is real. You can go on the World Bank website and you can read lots of vox pops of all of, with all of the key characters in all of these things, going all the way back to the 70s and the development of the neoliberal financialization project. It's all there. They're all quite proud of it and want to talk about it. You see. It doesn't get in the newspapers, but they're all sort of they're like dogs pissing on lampposts, setting out, I did this bit.
Okay.
So it's with all of this stuff at the moment, and the Gavin Williamson thing is very, very important because what it shows is the dynamic of power between a lame duck zombie Prime Minister, Theresa May, and an ascendant, an extremely powerful, technocratic civil servant who is actually a spy. This is Sidwell. And of course, his relationship with May goes back to her appointment as Home Secretary in 2010 by Cameron, but it goes back all the way to Robin Cook and Jack Straw and their illegal war, and also in terms of the Chilcot report. You've got to study Sidwell and look. I noticed his hard talk on the BBC is being pulled off. You can't get it anywhere at the moment. And he did a hard talk in 2010 when he was the British ambassador to Afghanistan, which he became after he was the NATO High Representative in Afghanistan for NATO. So he is a creature of NATO, and that means he's a Stoltenberg guy and he's a Mogherini guy. That's him. Now,
who's the first guy? Who's Stoltenberg?
He's Secretary General of NATO. Right. Yeah. So effectively, what you have is the dynamic here is you've got Williamson, who, as you've said, is he the State Department? Well, the State Department is divided on this stuff too, you see. Like Obama did the Iran deal, okay, and Trump opposes the Iran deal. The Iran deal upset the neocons and Israel. And the current move to war against Iran, which is happening, all the maneuvers are going on, all the assets are being put in place. The Straits of Hormuz are currently now being shut down, which will cause a world recession. And then also, at the same time, you've also got the USA providing, in effect, air support now for this attempted coup in Venezuela. And they've been trying to get the Venezuelan, they've been doing what they did and have been doing in South America for a long time, but what they've been doing more recently in North Africa and Syria, Middle East, Egypt, etc. So, and this dynamic is complicated by, in the Middle East, US interests and Saudi interests, but there are also Russian interests there, Turkish interests, and of course Turkey are a member of NATO, but Turkey have effectively gone over to the Russian and kind of Iranian side of things, really, and it is horrendously complicated.
Guess what I heard about Iran the other day?
I don't know. What did you hear about Iran the other day?
Well, because I know you've been telling me about the importance of Iran. I think the official reason for Huawei being on the naughty list in the US is they do business with them. I know ZTE were on the naughty list.
It's actually more than that. It isn't about it's not about the business. It's not even about the back doors. Although it's more about the back doors and the business, because everybody knows it's no longer a suspicion because of the Vault 7 leaks. I was reading a bunch of stuff the other day on some about this stuff. And the thing about it is that what the USA is trying to turn itself into the Byzantine Empire, right? Okay. What we've been going through is kind of a splitting of a re-splitting of the Roman Empire into the Eastern and the Western Roman Empires, okay? And what then happened is the Byzantians, the way they ran then the Western, what was the Western Roman Empire, no, the Eastern Roman Empire, which became the Byzantine Empire. It was run by various vassal states. And of course, that all came to an end at the end of the First World War. Gallipoli and all of that, and Turkey joined with the Axis powers, with Germany, Austro-Hungary. And then when they all lost, you had the Treaty of Versailles, which did lead directly then into the Second World War. But what I think American foreign policy is looking to now is to control the access to resources for their potential competitors, but via satellite vassal things. And the EU are lined up to be one of these vassal, like almost a vassal empire, okay? And the quid pro quo for that, okay, the Americans are saying, well, if you have that, but you can then have Africa as well. And this is Guy Verhofstadt sort of saying, oh, we know Africa's important for us. The German defense minister saying, oh, you know, of course, Africa, we've been interested in doing. Tony Blair, they're all saying it, right? And that's, I mean, it's deeply imperialist and it's deeply racist. I mean, they're basically saying we can run Africa better than you. You know that the franc is still the currency in Mali. You know, in the French. You cracked a joke the other day, didn't you, about Morocco? Was it Morocco or Algiers about the democracy? What was that joke?
My understanding is that the French central bank decides the value of all those currencies. They're all paid.
It does, yeah.
It's all decided in Paris.
Yeah, but do you remember when you said the joke about the coup d'etat?
Oh, what you mean in Algeria? Le Monde called it the coup d'etat démocratique.
Yes, that was it. Yeah. I mean, that perfectly explains what's happening in Venezuela as well at the moment, isn't it? I mean, that's effectively what the BBC is saying.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
And EU, for that matter. But so, right, let's look at our. We've talked about Sidwell, we've talked about Huawei, we've talked about Williamson. And then you come to Assange and the extradition and how that all fits into it. So what was Assange's great crime? Let's ask this. Was the greater crime the leaks about the Democratic Party, and Hillary Clinton's server, or was it the leaks of the extrajudicial killings, the basically war crimes, the shooting of civilians from attack helicopters in Iraq? You know, so was it the
journalists, weren't they? They were Reuters journalists that got murdered.
Well, there have been so many murders. I mean, the famous footage was actually really put out by the Icelandic. She's a poetess and artist who became a politician in Iceland.
You mean Brigadier Jonas?
Yeah, her. She was instrumental in getting that particular WikiLeaks really in the press. And I've not seen anything from her for ages. In fact, I must have a look and see what she said.
I met her last year, actually.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
She was at,
so it's an interesting question. Was that the greater crime of Assange, or was it the Clinton server thing, which the American establishment, including the neocons, they blame Julian Assange for having Trump instead of Clinton. And, you know, I mean, Assange's father was interviewed the other day, and he did point out, well, she did that all by herself. You know, it wasn't the leaks or anything like that. I mean, all this pretty much. It wasn't even the final nail in the coffin. She was one of the worst candidates in history. In the same way that, you know, Theresa May was an appalling candidate in 2017. And one wag said, you know, it looks as if she studied Hillary Clinton's campaign and said, oh, let's do one of those. And hey, it worked again, or didn't work, if you see what I mean. So, so that's an interesting question on the Assange stuff. Of all the stuff that he's done, what is the greater crime? So the extradition is on a non-capital offence, isn't it? The extradition is or what we're told it's based upon. It is you know, something that doesn't carry with it the death penalty. And what everyone's saying is that, well, actually, everybody knows that when he gets there, there will be other charges and there will be a death penalty involved in all likelihood. And there have been lots of weasel words about this, but of course the point is that Ecuador were given money by the international banking system. They were given a loan. That's international development, and that's how it works. So this is another thing that the oligarchy and the financialized part of the oligarchy and the military industrial complex, they're getting less shy about showing how structurally embedded they are in society. You know, with war reporting, embedded reporters and all of that stuff, where they sort of say, well, the press is embedded with the military. Well, actually, what we see now is the security apparatus and the military embedded in the civilian civic society. And it's very clear in terms of climate policies that they're being pushed by the war hawks as much as they are by the finance people. And so people like
I think what's funny about this is the relative sort of view, because it's one thing for you to take your position from, you know, you're clearly not major players in politics. And when I say that, I mean, obviously you've got people with money, and then you've got their agents who control whatever they, or, you know, set out the limits. So when it comes to the people who control whatever they by interpreting, they will have their own range of views within them. Obviously all within a narrow sort of spectrum. But I've had some interaction with somebody who's part of all of that, and it's interesting, some of the people around them say, oh, this guy's really ethical, he's not a hawk, you know, he's just a journalist. But
by bankers and for commerce, the game is to control access to resources, yeah, and the way that's done is through the financial system and through the money system. I mean, there's nothing controversial in that. I mean, anyone that's been paying attention, and have you read the book Confessions of an International Hitman? Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been years now, yeah. I mean, I know something about embedded reporters because a good friend of mine used to have to bodyguard them in Afghanistan and Iraq. He was quite a senior military officer, but, you know, characters basically had to wear a gun on his belt and bulletproof vests. And one of the things that he absolutely used to do his head in, you'd have all these star embedded reporters that wouldn't wear their flak jackets, okay? And my friend used to say, you must wear your flak, and he used to get all sorts of trouble. I don't want to, it ruins my, you know, and I don't, whatever. And what he was saying is, look, it's not about your personal safety. If you're not wearing one, you will draw fire, and that endangers my men. So I don't care if you get shot, but I care if my men get shot. Put the fucking thing on. And this is the problem you have with these elitists and people like Gavin Williamson, is they don't understand the danger. Even in these illegal, our people are put in danger, and they are following orders, and what they're asking to be complicit in is a sanitized storytelling of what that war actually is. And I mean, this is the great gift of WikiLeaks to us, because otherwise our view of, say, the Iraq war would have been shock and awe, and all the video of highly targeted weapons, you know, they can go down a flue into a thing, and we only kill the people we want to kill, and totally and utterly the collateral damage that they call it, you know, which is basically killing innocent women and children and elderly people and all the rest of it.